Welcome to the business of life. The idea behind this podcast is simple. It's conversations with people whose journeys, experiences, and life struggles have stayed with me in some way or the other. This isn't a podcast about titles, positions, or conventional definitions of success. It's about the choices we make, challenges we face, the lessons we learn, and how we push through. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Rose Puffer, Superintendent, International School of Islamabad. For decades, Rose has dedicated to her career to education, leadership, and helping shape future generations. In a world increasingly defined by change, uncertainty, and complexities, her perspective on resilience, learning, and most importantly, leadership is one that I believe many of us can learn from. Rose, thank you for joining me.
It's my pleasure.
I'm especially pleased to have Rose as my first guest. As both a parent, alumni, and a board member, I have had the opportunity to see her leadership firsthand, and I couldn't think of a better person to help launch this series. So let's go straight into it. Your childhood. Let's talk a bit about that, how it all started, where you were, and how.
I grew up as part of an extended family, which was very unusual. I was in a very white Anglo-Saxon Protestant suburb of Boston, and we were the only family I knew where two languages were spoken at home. And we lived with my grandmother. I think one of the reasons I've been so comfortable in Pakistan is because of the extended family structure. My grandmother was with me all the time. My mother joined my father's family, and he had 3 single sisters living at home who didn't leave until they were married. And one never married, so she became sort of my sister mother kind of thing. So I'm very, very close to my first cousins. My aunts were like my sisters. I was an only child for 13 years, and then my brother was born, the king in the Italian family. But by then, I was off to college when he was going into kindergarten. Mm-hmm. So I never really knew him except as an adult. And he's almost like my second son. My father died when we were very young. I was maybe 23 and my brother was 13. He was 10. And my father said, you've got to take care of him. And it's like I have 2 sons, my own son and my brother.
Wow. But you were always drawn to education and leadership. Were you
always, from first grade. And I don't exactly know why, because in first grade, since I'd always been the center of attention at home with all these 7 adults around, to do my bidding. In first grade, even though I was always in trouble and in the corner 3 times, I think, I always wanted to be a teacher. And that just became a stronger and stronger vocation as I got older. And I think it's because my family was so respectful of educators. My father had to quit school when he was 13 because his father had been killed in an automobile accident crossing the street, and his mother he was the oldest, and he had 5 younger sisters, the youngest being 18 months. So in 8th grade, he quit school and had to go to work to support the family. And my grandmother was supporting her family. My grandfather had built this beautiful home in this very nice suburb, one of the few Italian families. And yet, social services wanted to come in and take care of the kids. And she said, no, I'm going to take care of my family and keep this house. And she was a dress designer for a lot of the debutantes in Boston. She had her own sewing school for a lot of the women who wanted to learn the finer skills in homekeeping. So she was a fighter, and she probably worked till she was about 80.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you alluded to Italians, and I know that Italians and Pakistanis have one thing in common, which is we're very family oriented.
Very.
But from a young age, did you ever think you would eventually land yourself in Pakistan?
I thought I would stay in the Boston suburbs like my entire family has for my whole life.
Yeah.
And I never went overseas until after I was married, because that was something my husband wanted to do. So as difficult as my marriage was, I wouldn't be overseas, and I don't think I would have gotten the fulfillment that I really have gotten out of my career if I had been an administrator in the US.
Mm. And your earliest impressions of Pakistan? I mean, we're talking now 36 years.
37, actually.
37.
1990, it was so quiet. I mean, it was 500,000 people. And, you know, I think Margala Road was a 1-lane road. Faisal Avenue was the only 4-lane highway.
Yeah.
And it was just a very different place. You know, we had maybe 2 restaurants that we could go to. The Marriott Hotel was the only hotel. But it was a very tightly knit community, especially with the expatriates that were in town, because we were all together.
But you did bring your son to Pakistan, correct?
Yes.
At the start.
He was in 3rd grade.
He was in 3rd grade.
He was in 3rd grade. My son is adopted from Peru. My first overseas post was in Peru at the Colegio Roosevelt. I was brought there to create a middle school in 1980 when middle schools were just starting to become the thing in the United States, but I'd worked at one, and the superintendent there really wanted me to become a principal of a middle school. And I had to take the 7th and 8th grade away from this very territorial secondary principal, and the 6th grade away from the very territorial elementary principal, but I didn't have a building. So it was all the organization and management that created the ethos of the middle school. And I was very successful, according to the teachers and the parents. And I guess at that point, I really knew that I was destined to be an administrator, although I didn't remain an administrator. I mean, we adopted my son. I think I took 1 maternity day leave, and he had been abandoned in the street, placenta intact, and we found him when he was about 5 years old. And I didn't know if he'd be okay. He couldn't hold his head up. He couldn't hold anything in his hand. And I figured we could give him any kind of a better life than he would have if he stayed alive. And I think some of my resilience developed back then because it seemed like the Peruvian authorities were set against having me adopt him. There had been a lot of corruption with babies for sale, so none of the judges wanted to sign off on it. And I remember one high court judge that I had gone to see, and he said, "No, this just isn't possible." And I said, "I don't understand this." I had very limited Spanish, but I knew legal Spanish and kitchen Spanish. I said, "I don't understand this. This baby would be dead if I didn't have him home." And he turned around and said to me, "Death certificates are easy. Adoptions are difficult," and walked away. And I was determined that that baby was not going to anybody else. From the moment I held him in my arms, he was mine. And he's the biggest joy of my life to this day.
And he's also a graduate of the
He's
International
also a
School of
graduate
Islamabad.
of the International School of Islamabad. Northeastern is a tech engineer in Cambridge.
Wow. Yeah. Incredible. Coming back to Pakistan, I know you how Islamabad was, and it was a much more calmer place, and now it's become a very exciting place. And every week or two, we have visitors from all over the world coming to Pakistan. But personally, what are the positive changes that you've witnessed in Pakistan?
It's much more intercultural. I think it's much more cosmopolitan. You were accepted as a foreigner and always respected as a foreigner because it's always been a city of bureaucrats and people who came from somewhere else. But people have a pride in being from Islamabad, which 37 years ago, everybody was just, "Oh, I'm from Lahore. I'm really a Lahori. I'm really from Karachi. I'm really from Peshawar." And I see it as a much more cosmopolitan city. I see it as a very beautiful city. I think that what has kept me in Pakistan really has been the people. The people, the Pakistani people are just so welcoming, and anybody who comes thinks that. Another reason I stayed was as I was here over the years, teachers would leave and then they'd write to me and say, "You know, there hasn't any place that has been as wonderful to live in as Pakistan, or any school that's been as wonderful. And students would write that, and students still write that generations later. They have a pride in their school, a pride in their time here. I think it's sad that the embassy doesn't have people back. I understand why, but it's preventing a lot of Americans from really understanding what Pakistan really is.
And back in the day, I mean, pre 9/11, I think we had 600 plus students on campus, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, it was around 1993, 94, we had about 650. And then when US aid cut back because of the nuclear program, we were then between 525 and 550 until 9/11.
Until 9/11. And not having the US here, the families not here, it does contribute to having less students at school as well.
It makes it more difficult to ensure that it remains an American school and doesn't become a British school or a European school, but an actual American school. And for that, I have the board members that have been appointed by the ambassador to thank. I also have the Department of State, Office of Overseas Schools, which has been completely supportive of our school, even though they usually aren't. Once official dependents aren't there, and they've been very encouraging and supporting us and paying for a lot of the security costs.
Now, you mentioned security, and I know that means a lot of challenges, right? And just to shift gears, because I do want to discuss leadership, I do want to discuss responsibility, because you are the superintendent, but you're also the guardian of many students, many families, and the school is very much a community. But leadership to you, what does it mean today, where you stand 37 years later, compared to when you started? How has that evolved? And I'm sure Pakistan has played a role in that as well. But leadership to you today, what does it mean to you?
It's hard, but it is all based on trust. You have to develop the trust with the people that are working for you, especially in the profession that I've chosen, to be able to get excellent teachers to come. The parents have to trust me to be making decisions about whether or not their children are going to be safe at school. It's very humbling, but it's also a very heavy load, It's about organization. It's about dedication. It's about never saying no. People keep saying, you've got to learn to say no. But when you become a leader, if people want to learn from your leadership, I'm still an educator. That's something I'm always going to be. And I'm never going to not provide insights to other people. I spent about 4 hours over the break with another head of school who's going through some tough times in international school. But when I had those tough times, I had people that I could call on as well. So it goes both ways. It's a very close fraternity of international school leaders at American international schools. And building that network has been essential to remaining a leader, because it hasn't been enough to keep the school open. I've always wanted to keep it one of the best schools in the world, and it still is.
Absolutely. And leadership, and I think you've played the role so well, and it brings me back to, because I think about leadership as well, and I'm a no mark on the amount of years of leadership you've done, but I find it's important to look at leadership as a service, as you have just said, right? And you were a teacher, then principal, superintendent. You went up that trajectory, and I think we get so lost in the titles and the fame and the positions and the offices that we forget what the true essence of leadership is, which is to be a steward, to guide. Right? It's not about having so many followers, but creating leaders, creating other leaders. And I know you're in the process of creating other leaders too.
And that's been one of the things that I've tried to do most is share what I've learned about leadership. I had wonderful mentors, and without those mentors, I don't think I could have developed the the leadership skills that I have, and I see it as part of my vocation to teach others those important skills.
But if I was to ask you, what has, and if you are comfortable enough to talk about it, because I know a lot of the school challenges, especially the security ones, are quite sensitive, but any situation which has tested your leadership the most, which you can recall or which you fondly, now you can fondly recall, but what has been that situation which tested your leadership the most in the context of the school?
There was a time after 9/11 when I remember my mentor called the leadership team into his office, and I was the acting principal at the high school at the time because the principal hadn't come back. And he said, well, do we stay open or do we close? And I said, we have to close. No one else said anything. And he said, why do you say that? I said, we don't know at this point whether Musharraf is going to come down in favor of the U.S. or against the U.S. We have to close for 30 days and send people home till we know what happens. And he sat back and he said, if that's what Rose thinks, that's what we've got to do. And I looked at him and I said, why are you saying that? He said, you're the most level-headed person I know. You've been here longer than any of the others, any of us. You're never afraid of being here. And you're absolutely right. But I don't know that I'd seen myself as a head of school before that. I'd seen myself as a principal, but not as a head of school before that. The other really heavy decision was when I found out that a finance manager that I had inherited was not as devoted to the school as I was. And his wife was a teacher, and they caused an incredible amount of harm to the school. Had I not had the board that I had that was so staunchly understanding and who trusted in me so much, and faculty that trusted in me so much, I think that the finance director and his wife would have taken over the school. And I don't think it would exist today. But with the embassy appointees, the board were just staunchly behind me. And again, it's that trust that you build. And he was someone, I hadn't hired him, I had inherited him, but I was upset that I hadn't been more hands-on, that I had trusted too much when money was at stake. And you trust people, but you also are the one who's chiefly accountable, and you have to be the one that is providing that oversight. So even though sometimes it seems overbearing, you've noticed that I take a very strong stance on finances.
Yeah. No, but trust, you've mentioned quite a few times now, and that is definitely a central pillar of leadership, of running a school, of running it's not just a school, it's also a business, you can say, with regards to the number of investments and money in, money out. There's a lot of talk now around AI, but we're forgetting HI, which is human intelligence. Are you seeing in the near future, because it comes down to people, right? Hiring the right people, finding the right people. And I believe strongly, if you have the right people, that solves, I think, 80% of your problems, right? And then obviously the trust comes in and all of those. But with the integration of now AI coming into the fray, are you thinking about that at all? Or are you thinking, this is not my business? Or are you concerned about the introduction of AI?
I'm very concerned about the introduction of AI because I know it's going to be a part of our life. It already is. You have to remember that I'm so old that I go back to pre-calculators when I had to use a slide rule. I wouldn't be as good at math if I didn't have a calculator. And then I can remember arguing with people when we couldn't type our papers on computers. I am old enough to know that AI is going to have a place in society. And the only way that we can ensure that it has the right place and the and the proper amount of influence is to know as much as we can about it. So we took a sizable portion of our professional development fund, and all of our faculty did 6 courses this year. And then our leadership team did those 6 courses plus 2 more. And when we started our leadership course, which was after the others, he started in reviewing everything. And one of the leadership team said, Alex, we've already done all the faculty courses. He said, you all sat through the faculty courses? And that's another thing I credit with my success as a leader, is that professional development is extremely important. When I was a new principal, I went to the Thomas Jefferson School of Science and Technology at a summer workshop where they were introducing virtual school. And Robin Brogy, our school did the pilot virtual school. There wasn't another one. It was hosted at JOST, Jefferson Overseas School of Science and Technology. And I went there, and here is this principal of a school where 90% of the kids were all PSAT scholars. They were all going to Ivy League schools. It's the premier science and technology school in that area of Washington and Fairfax County. And he sat there, and it was a fabulous building, every kind of machine you would want. This was back 25 years ago. But even then, it was awe-inspiring. And he's had educators from all over the world. He said, you know, you've seen a lot of fancy equipment here, but I could run this school without any new equipment for 3 years and still produce top-notch students. But if you take away my professional development budget, I can't. And I truly believe that. And not only do I do professional development, anything I ask the faculty to do, I do as well. So one of the leadership team is with a conference with them, because if you're asking them to grow and you're not growing, how could I be running a school in this age with everything that's changed from when I went to college? I graduated in 1970. How could I run a school? It was before computers. If I didn't do hundreds of hours of professional development a year. And I think people get to a leadership position and very often think, well, now I'm here. Everybody else can do it. But you can't. You have to do whatever you're asking anybody else to do. And that's another test of leadership. You're not above what anybody on that campus is doing.
You enjoy making decisions. Was that safe to say? Are you a easy? I'm not easy, but because you see,
I like input.
You like input.
I like input. So whether we have virtual school or something, you send me an email saying, "Heads up, call the leadership team in." They hate it when Nita calls and says, "Rose needs you in her office," and we all have a voice, so that it's not a gut decision. It's an educated decision where you look at all of the other aspects. One of the things that I think has helped me most professionally is being on the NISA board. Because the NISA board years ago, it's the professional development for all of the Near East, South Asia region, from Southern Europe, Northern Africa, all the way over to past India, up to Nepal. And we provide all the professional development for teachers at international schools there. And long ago, the NISA board, who were top-notch educators, decided that traditional strategic planning wasn't what we needed to keep this organization as one of the best in the world. And it's still considered the best in the world of all the regional organizations. That's only a little bit of prejudice there. But, we had a consultant come in and teach us how to practice Theory U. And Theory U was developed by Otto Scharmer at MIT. Very much a part of business education now, but it's an amalgamation of the head, the heart, and the and the soul, and making those decisions and opening yourself up enough so that you can be open to whatever might happen. And I had leaders at the time when I started really practicing it that would freak out if we didn't have a lockstep 5-year plan. And you can't have a lockstep 5-year plan in Islamabad. And it's funny that the executive director of NISA, just a couple of years ago, we were in the middle of something, and she said, "How do you deal with it?" And I said, as I reflect on it, it's theory you. I don't panic. I don't say, okay, I've got to make a decision. I lean back. I get as much input as I can. I realize that I'm going to make a decision. Maybe it's going to be the right one. I might need to adjust it. But I'm always open to that.
Yeah. Very democratic in your approach, which is a very good thing.
I'm very collaborative.
Very collaborative. Because
it's not majority rules. I'm collaborative, but I have to take the brunt of the decision
because
making.
ultimately the buck stops with you.
Exactly.
Right? So you get the information from all over. And I know the immense pressure that you're always under. And the reason I was asking about decision making is because I find leaders, they get the information, they have all the bright minds around them, but then they are the ones that have to make the call, right? Yes or no. And it's that yes or no which is usually the toughest. But beyond the professional life, in your personal life, are you equally as attentive to decision making, or would you struggle in personal decisions, like what outfit am I going to wear, or where will we eat tonight? Or are you very much the same on both fronts?
It took me 29 years to realize that I should have gotten a divorce after 5 years. So I don't think I'm as good in my personal life at making decisions.
Fair enough. But you've now spent over 3 decades in Islamabad. Maybe the wrong question to ask, but any regrets of spending 3 decades here and not in your home country?
The big regret goes back to family, because I can remember back around 2000, 2001, which is when I separated from my husband. I went back to Lehigh and they wanted me to do my doctorate. And I said, no. And actually, 2001, they wanted me to do my doctorate in school security.
Oh, wow.
And I said, no, I can't do my doctorate. And they begged me. And I said, I can't do my doctorate. My mother's health is failing. If I do my doctorate for the next 4 years, every vacation, every summer, I'm going to be at Lehigh or working on research. I can't do that. I need as much time with her as I can. And I had that time. It was a gift. I have never regretted not getting my doctorate. I have regretted that I wasn't closer to my mother for longer periods of time. I have regretted my 2 aunts that I grew up with that didn't have their own children. They really depended on me. And I would spend as much time with them when I was home. And I was devoted to them. I would call them every day, just like I would call my mother every day. But it wasn't the same as being there. But my mother is probably the person that I probably credit with my stamina. My mother was a widow before she married my father. Her husband was killed on the beach of Normandy. They'd only been married 30 days. Oh. She also was valedictorian of her class at Boston Latin, which was the most prestigious school in Boston at the time. Her brother wanted her to go to university, and she went to work in factories to support the war effort. And married my father about 5 years later. And then my father died when she was 50. Oh. And she just worked her whole life and wanted what was best for me and for my brother. And she made sure, she was the one that said, no, you're not coming home. You're going to stay there. You have a life there. You're successful there. You love your job. Not everybody loves their job. You have to, I want you to be happy. I want you to stay there. And I will be okay. And my brother has been amazing because he was always there. with all three of them,
Yeah.
my two aunts and my mother.
But then that was sacrifice, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's the only regret, that I wasn't there. I frequently thought, had I not been in Pakistan, even if I'd been in South America instead of Pakistan, it would be
Closer.
easier. But that's the only regret. I have never regretted that my son graduated from the school and had an international education.
Yeah.
It's made him who he is today.
No, it has. No, because I mean, it's a lot of sacrifice, especially to leave the United States and then set up a whole life here and then living that entire life. But coming back to the school security doctorate, I mean, now in hindsight, you can probably teach that doctorate without having the degree. I mean, the amount of experiences
Yeah,
you've had to deal with.
it's amazing. I do a lot of visits for middle states,
Yeah.
and I'm the one they always give the security. I was on their International Advisory Committee for 6 years, and I was always the one that would point out holes in security and then have to go back to make sure that they had improved them. But it's amazing what you can see when you know what to look for, and what people don't see when they're just doing it to check off a list. It
Very
can't
true.
be a checklist.
Can't be a checklist.
It just can't be a checklist. And for so many years it was.
And the reason why this excites me is because, as you know, my line of work is security, and I've learned so much from you. And I sit with, I can't take names, but all sorts of individuals with lots of years of experience in security. But the amount I've learned from you, and because we overcomplicate the subject so much, and like you said, a checklist can't apply everywhere. It's very contextual, situational, evolving, and we just, I mean, this is a different subject for another day, but I find we are reactive and not proactive.
Exactly.
Right? And that's what separates the school and also other well-run institutions where there are steps taken before something happens rather than
it's what
after something happens.
frustrates me about some people in Pakistan really have not been taught to be proactive. They're only reactive. And I'm hoping that we're giving our children the skills to think. And that's part of the education that we want to provide, that they reason, that they think, that they collaborate, that they don't get into a dictatorial position where it's this or that and now just check off the list.
Yeah.
And you'll do as I say, not ask me why.
Yeah. But then balancing the children element, balancing security, then your leadership roles with the regional initiatives, NISA and others, middle states, and then of course dealing with parents, expats, ambassadors, ministers. I mean, let's be honest, you've seen quite a bit, you've met quite a lot of people. How do you do that balance for someone who's trying to figure it out? How do you maintain that balance and perspective and actually stay sane?
You listen to all of them. You have to make the right decision based upon what you know at the time. And if you make the wrong decision, you make the wrong decision, but the safety of the kids has to come first. And, there have been times where I've called virtual school and then nothing's happened. I said, okay, yeah, maybe we could have had it, but given the information I had to make the decision that would keep children safe. Now that I've been doing it so long, people have a lot of trust that I'll make the right decision. They get worried if I'm calling virtual school and they haven't. But sometimes parents will write and say, well, I've heard this from the minister, or I've heard this from that minister. And I just say, yes. And you're still going to have school? Yes. But again, it's lots of sources. It's not just my security head. Yeah. It's not just you. It's putting everything together.
But beyond just security, I mean, just the other education and then your staff, teachers, do you, as we would say, chill? When do you chill? When does Rose chill? And what does she do to chill? Because I've never seen you chill. I mean, I've been to your home for the meetings, and it's lovely. I know there's a special room you don't use because you don't chill. So where do you relax? Do you relax? I mean,
I have upstairs in my house, I have a puppy.
you have a puppy.
I don't have any grandchildren, or I wouldn't still be here. I have a puppy, and I read, I do puzzles, I have very close friends. I do a Zoom with my family every week.
Okay.
I do a Zoom with my former admin assistant every week. I have former educators who are still in touch that I am in frequent contact with. You'd think being such a people person, I would want to be surrounded by people all the time, but I really like the quiet time. But what I do to chill, and you should know this, most people do, but the leadership team knows. You know, I have WhatsApp, the phone's beside me. I never know what's going to happen. If middle of the night, May something, you get a call. But when I get home, I don't look at my email, my school email.
After 4 p.m., 5 p.m.
Well, 6 usually.
6.
But I don't look at once I'm home, I don't look at my school. I figure anything that's important, people are going to WhatsApp me.
Okay.
And I worked all this week during the holiday, from Tuesday till Friday. Saturday and Sunday, I did not open my school email. I had kept up with my email for the whole week, and anything that came in then would wait till I got back on Monday. Because what I was finding, and it only has been the last 3 or 4 years that I've had the wisdom to do that, because I would always check it before I go to school, and somebody would be upset about something, and then I would perseverate about it all night.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't sleep well. And when you get to be my age, you need to sleep well.
Yeah.
So I get my sleep, and getting my sleep helps.
But you haven't been pulled into the yoga traps and meditation and the wellness.
I've never done that.
Never done that.
Now, mindfulness, yes.
Yeah.
Mindfulness, yes. I find doing puzzles very mindful. I've only just discovered that like the last year or two. Yeah. But I've learned to appreciate mindfulness. But no, I've never been an exerciser except for in the pool.
You're still in great shape, Rose. Far fitter than I am. And thank you for walking up 2 flights of stairs. No, because you're right about checking your phone. And I feel like now it's so hard to be disconnected. And being an entrepreneur, running your own show, very much like the school, although you can leave the school by 6 p.m., 5 p.m., but you're mentally still there, right? You're still, God forbid, something happens at the school, you need to be. And I find now it's so much harder for people to disconnect. And my wife has this problem with me that even on the weekends,
you have to disconnect, because otherwise it's not healthy.
But
one of my advantages is I didn't grow up with a mobile phone, so I always have my mobile phone. I don't even walk around campus with my mobile phone.
Wow, I think that's a huge benefit.
They always know.
You're not TikToking or Snapchatting?
No. And of course, I'm not a social media generation.
Yeah.
So
that's a huge plus.
It's very different.
Yeah, you had a huge benefit. I feel like it's just getting, I won't say worse and worse, but it's getting harder to manage.
Well, it's getting troubling.
Troubling.
It's one of the things we're really looking at, because the social emotional well-being of our kids, especially when they hit middle school and high school, as we spoke about at the board meeting, it's something we've really got to start paying attention to.
And that leads me to my next section, which is, I mean, we've mentioned social media, but what else concerns you about young people today, from what you're seeing and observing, and what should we be watching out for?
The fact that they are becoming much too dependent on AI. And I'm afraid that if they aren't taught how to use AI properly, that they won't develop the reasoning skills, the writing skills, the verbal skills, the linguistic skills, all of those skills that you developed as a high school student at our school. And where our students really excel. Is it okay to put in my comments and have a routine document done? Sure, but I have to read it.
Yeah.
It's it's a danger that we have to really prepare our kids for. And I'm also worried about the social media algorithms that are becoming really addictive. I think, people aren't drinking as much. I don't think they're doing as many drugs, but the social media is creating the same kind of addictions.
Yes.
And I'm very, very worried about that. I don't think I'm glad that the school has hired a successor who's of a younger generation, because I think you need someone who is much more involved with social media and technology to be able to take the school to the next stage. And as I said, we have been working on that, but it's a real concern. It's the thing I'm most concerned about.
And that's a global problem, I think.
Absolutely.
And it's not unique to Pakistan.
And I'm afraid of the whiplash. Okay, so just turn off all social media. That's like, I didn't want to take kids' phones away from them because you have to learn how to use it responsibly. But right now, the big Silicon Valley guys are making that something the kids can't be responsible for, because their brains are at a developmental stage where it's too risky. So, I'm very worried about technology being used properly, because it does need to be used. And, we will continue to use more and more sophisticated technology, but we have to use it responsibly.
But with all that in mind, and with all that you're seeing, I mean, not to get political, but just the challenges we're seeing in the world. Pakistan, of course, has its own challenges. The region, the US is having its own challenges. And I'd like to say you have more experience in life than I do, than many do. Are you hopeful, though, about the future?
Not until we do something about education. I'm hopeful for the future of our kids. I'm hopeful for the future of kids that go to international schools. And I know that sounds prejudiced, but I look at the standardized testing scores and reading scores of every state in the United States that has not maintained where they were from 2019. I look at the level of education in Pakistan, and there's no way you're going to be able to deal with a world so steeped in technology and artificial intelligence without education. It's why professional development is so important. But I worry about our education systems. I don't know that they are robust enough in, we have classes of 10, 12, we have, their kids don't fall through the cracks, but in these big school systems, or where politicians are determining the curriculum, I worry in Pakistan about how little school there is. The shortened day, that suddenly we're going to be on, okay, now you'll have it 4 days a week. Okay, now you'll have it early hours for Ramadan. Okay, now you'll have it, now you'll have a longer summer break. And I realize why. I realize it's because there are no air conditioners, because there's no fuel. But there has to be a way to keep the children educated. It has to have more of the limelight, more of the spotlight, for Pakistan to be able to develop generations that can sustain all the people.
Yeah. And in your 37 years in Pakistan, would you say it's progressed or regressed?
I'm very worried about the dependence upon schools for profit. I've never worked in a school for profit. I refuse to work in a school for profit.
There may be some confusion, because international school, many would argue, is for profit. So maybe better to clarify.
Yeah. Okay, well, in an international school where you're spending more per student than you're charging for tuition, even though it's hard to believe, it's not for profit. In a for-profit school, the top 40% of all the income goes to the owner. Our school doesn't have an owner. International schools don't have an owner. All of the parents approve, they elect a board, the board approves a budget. And I hope that in most international schools, the board is as fiscally responsible as ours, where they do look at those finances regularly and understand what the money's being spent on and why it's being spent. Not that they're making the decisions, but knowing where it's going. And improving.
So you mean to say that the private schools culture will ultimately not benefit any developing country, not just necessarily Pakistan, because our public system is so weak, right?
Yeah, and the public system used to be stronger in the US, but it's getting weak there
Getting
too.
weaker there too.
I'm not familiar enough with Europe.
No.
I know that the public system in the UK is getting weaker, but they wouldn't necessarily agree with that. But there's still a lot of rote learning. If you can go to an exam center, I can remember when we were in the early 2000s. I was a new superintendent, and it was after the Marriott bombing, and the UN didn't know if they were going to pull out. We had a big security meeting at my house because we were so small. And the parents said, well, just teach the curriculum faster. Like, just get through the book. That's not education.
Yeah.
If you can go to a tuition center and then ace the exam, what are you going to know 6 years or 2 years from then?
No.
You're not going to know anything.
You touched upon it earlier, succession. And I know, unfortunately for us, but your stint in Pakistan will be coming to a close. Hopefully you will still remain a friend of Pakistan.
Always.
Always
But 2 more years.
2 more years.
Some people think I'm leaving next year.
No,
It's
2 more years. But after 37 years, 2 more years doesn't seem like enough. And I know the city will miss you, the country will miss you. But what sort of parting message, if I was to say, you'd want to give your alumni, all the students that went through ISOI, the parents, people you liked, people you maybe didn't like? What is the sort of goodbye message you want to say to them if I ask you?
I think that our school is a really, really special place. I'm not exactly sure why. At graduation this year, multiple parents came up and said we could feel the love, we could feel the belonging. The valedictorian and salutatorians talked about their teachers, they talked about their school. You could tell that those kids loved their school. You could tell that the teachers really loved what those students had accomplished. I want it to stay like that. I think the reason I've been harping on succession so much is that I've seen too many schools just taking the wrong turn by spending a lot of time reading resumes and maybe meeting with someone for an hour or two, or having them come in for 2 or 3 days, and then they're suddenly living in Islamabad and it isn't what they expected. I think succession planning is as important as being a good administrator, so that people can continue to learn. I was very concerned about the number of people who said, well, I'm leaving when you're leaving. That, I devoted my life to this school, and not too many people know. I think it's probably one of the other sacrifices. I think almost every year I had at least 3 job offers, and it was my decision to stay here. And
why?
You don't become an educator to get wealthy. So I've been told by people, I'm probably one of the lower paid heads of school in this area. That isn't what's important. You become an educator because you want to make a difference. This school has enabled me to see the difference I've made. So I see people like you that came in, who've become successful businessmen, wonderful fathers. So many of them, to have your students come back after 5, 10, 15, 20 years and say, I want my child to have the same education I had. To have students be able to recite what they learned from you in 6th grade. I mean, that still blows me away when they Kulsum Lakhani can tell me what the units were in sixth grade that we taught, and what her favorite one was. To be able to have a vocation, and it was a parent who told me, it was after the Marriott bombing, and he said, "Are you leaving?" Because a lot of people left after the Marriott bombing. I said, "No." He said, "No, of course you're not leaving." He'd been here with the World Health Organization for years and years, as head of the country. He said, "Of course you're not leaving. This isn't a job for you, it's a vocation." And I really see it that way now that I understand it. It's not the job. It's not the monetary reward. It's being able to see the opportunities you've been able to create for people, be that faculty, be that other principals, but mostly my students, who are now such amazing parents.
And not just students. So, and one thing which I really appreciate about ISOI, Rose, is, and I feel, because I'm often, in a situation, many my age, many in this generation, should we stay in Pakistan? Should we leave Pakistan? And you the pros and cons, and safety, and then security, and then just logistics. And my argument is, granted, it's not a perfect country, it's not a perfect city. But my argument is, over here, one has the ability to change lives and impact and make major impact. And you mentioned faculty, but support staff of ISOI, those gentlemen in the Shalwar Kameezes who look after the gates and the grounds, they've been there for decades as well.
Yes.
I mean, maybe as long as you have been, or some longer.
Some of them, many of them are retired now.
And what that shows me is that it's a community where, because they too have, I'm sure, gotten job offers. Because I also deal in these, in this sector. It's not always the money. It's the respect. It's the sort of love that they're shown. It's they are a part of the family. They are a part of the community,
and that they're appreciated.
And you mentioned it rightly. Money is not the driving factor. It's appreciation. It's just having that support behind you, and you have managed to create that quite beautifully at school. But is that 37 years of your leadership which has instilled that sort of culture within the school? And do you think after you leave that will be sustained? Because I think that's what the worry is for many parents and people.
I feel the school had that before I became superintendent, which is why I stayed that many years. I remember I was in Peru, I was in Saudi Arabia at the American International School of Riyadh. And when I walked on the campus, and after my son had been there for maybe a month, I said, I want him to graduate from this school. It was a good size. It was the smallest school I'd ever been in.
Yeah.
At 550. I didn't think you could have a school with 200 kids, much less 100. We've been down to 100.
You've defied all norms.
Yeah. But I knew if we closed after 9/11, if we closed, we wouldn't have been able to open again.
But the challenges would only grow. Are you worried about leaving the school? And I know you've got a strong succession plan, and of course we're all for it, and you have a good group of community members that will continue. But are you worried for the school at all? Or
I think that the team that we've got together, and the Sasha will be here, Josh will be here. I think that they will hold it together and really help the school to continue growing. I really believe that they have the temperament, the intelligence, the personalities to take the school to the next level, because they'll be here long term.
They'll be here. And will you actually finally relax once you... I mean, I know it's 2 years down the road. You still have time.
I don't know.
No? Or is there another chapter to your life, Rose?
People keep saying, so when you retire, what are you going to do? And I've got four companies that want me to work for them. And I said, if I were going to still work, I'd stay in Pakistan, assisted living at its best for me.
Yeah.
But, and people tease me about that. You have all these people working for you. And I said, yes, but every single one of their children are educated. And if I look at the generations that I've educated from my household staff, that adds a lot too. No, I think I want to spend time with family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go back to where it all started.
Yep.
And just last question. You've lived a very meaningful life. I would like to think, and from what I know, but what does for the next generation, for generations coming in, what advice would you leave for us with everything that's going on? What should we pursue? How do we live an equally meaningful life and create impact?
If you have a job that you love, try to have a job that you really love and build from there. It's hard because I think that even businessmen, I know that you're a businessman, but there's a service side of your business. Many of the people on the board that are businessmen, they have a service side of them. And that's important because it means that you're constantly contributing.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't think it's philanthropy. Throwing money at things is not philanthropy, but it's giving of yourself to make your businesses meaningful, to make them successful, but really taking pride in what you do. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to see the results of what you've accomplished, I think that's what's been so amazing for me, is to see those generations come through. And I couldn't ask for anything more rewarding than that.
You are the rose of ISOI, I always say, and you have a beautiful rose garden at ISOI as well. But I know we still have 2 more years, but you can take Rose out of ISOI, but you can't take ISOI out of Rose.
No, I don't think
you
so.
Can't take ISOI out
It'll
of
always be a part of you.
It'll always be a part of you.
And as I told the board, and I told Josh, I'm there. If you need me, I'm there.
I know.
Yeah.
We know. Well, thank you, Rose. This was a true pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
No, thank you for being with us, and thank you for being the first guest.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. So thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed this conversation with Rose Puffer. A lot to cover, I know. We only had limited time, but this is only the start of something special. Until next time.